Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today to have fellow Ohioan, experienced retail executive, author, podcaster extraordinaire, Susan Visconti. Thank you, Susan, for taking the time to be on the podcast today.
Yeah, this is awesome. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you.
So, one of the things that I love to do is to take a macro look at people's lives. You've done a lot of things. You're active in your community. You're serving in the retail space. You're doing all the different things in all the different places. If we were to pull back and ask the question, how would you answer what the calling God has placed on your life is?
Yeah, wow. That's a really big question. I love it. I think that if you had asked me that question 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I would probably answer it different than I would today. And not because I think the calling has changed, but I think that I've done a lot better job of listening
Oh, wow.
now than I have previously. And I think that I think that the underpinning of kind of where God is calling me and where He's directing me, that underpinning is about being present, and that is part of what I have been able to do more now than ever before. And the ability to be, I mean, I'd love to say that I've been present in everything and in every, where with everyone in the past. I think the truth is that I haven't been as much as I would have wanted to be, but God's grown me toward that now, which has been incredible. And now where I'm able to be more present, I see more, right? I hear more. It allows me to love people better than I could have before. And that underpinning has served me very well, being able to observe, see, hear things more clearly. As I think God, as I look back, and I think God has kind of directed me from a calling perspective to be in a place where there's kind of this intersection or juxtaposition of, on one hand, working in corporate America with business executives for over 2 decades now, and fortunate to work with the C-suite of big companies, big firms over those years. In that same time frame, He has very intentionally placed me in the city of Cincinnati, working with folks shoulder to shoulder, just rolling up my sleeves, working with folks that are working to break free from the cycle of poverty. And whether that's like the working poor, whether it's folks that are on the other end of the spectrum, like of homelessness and addiction, women in prison, incarcerated, and poverty takes all shapes and forms. And I think that what's been so interesting, and it's like I see it unfolding, is this. I've been able to see this through line that exists across those two groups. And I think the world kind of like very much pulls apart. I've been fortunate to be able to be a part of seeing that through line, seeing the commonality, the similarities, the same kind of successes, the same kind of struggles that exist, and then showing up well with what I've learned from each group as I show up with the other, and bringing them closer together, trying to help kind of close that gap. Because truly, I mean, you and I know we are all created in God's image.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot more similarities than there are differences. So I think that's kind of the general direction I'm headed.
I love it. And I really appreciate the way you talked about how the shift has kind of happened when it comes to listening and pursuing the presence. What's interesting to me about that is that your career continues to grow, and you've got kids who also continue to grow, and you're in major life shifts all the time. You're raising teenage humans, which I'm there with you on that. That's a wild adventure. And so what would you say if you were going to talk to somebody who's feels like they don't have time to listen or be present? What are some practical things, activities, tips? What can we steal from you to be a better listener when it comes to what God is calling us to or might be prompting us to be a part of?
Yeah. I think this is super simple, but I found it to be really impactful, is that I have genuinely asked God through prayer to help me see things more clearly.
Mm.
And I'm a believer that God can shift our hearts and shift our minds on ways that we can't. through our own strength. And so I think that part of that is really just leaning into prayer and asking Him to help us see things differently. And what I've experienced is that when you take a moment that you might not have taken otherwise to put everything down and kind of show up for someone else, and you see the impact of that, then then you start to get it, right? Like I start to see and I start to want to do those same things again and again. So I think clearly that God changing our hearts is a huge part of how we grow closer to Him, how we show His love to other people. I do think that another kind of more tactical, I guess, thing as well is slowing down, trying to find the practice of slowing down. When I think back to COVID days, I know we all probably had a lot of aha moments during that time. Also, one struggle, candidly, for lots of individuals. It was a difficult time and a time of maybe some enlightenment as well. One of the things that struck me at that time that I still think about on a week by week basis now is how it felt to be present with my kids and have them be present with me, and the relationship that we developed in those moments of just being in proximity to one another. We don't always necessarily, as young kids, I don't always need to be playing together, deep engagement, right? Like I've got teenagers, I get it. But there's something really important about proximity. There are times where even if my one son, who's a big gamer, is on, gaming with friends, I literally may just like hang out in his room working on my laptop. And there's just something about being close to one another. When someone wants to get up and go get a snack or whatnot, we're engaging, we're feeling together. And I know that might sound kind of simple, but for us, it's made a lot of difference.
Yeah, in our house, we call that stealing inches.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that.
So I got that from author Brooke Cups, and he talks about stealing inches on the basketball court and that sort of idea. But that when you can just be in the room with them, like I pick my kid up from college and I drive him home, and that airport ride back where he's sequestered and there's, he's not on his phone or whatever. That's like, I was like, I just got 4 months worth of information in a 1 hour drive back from CVG, right? So it's like
the car ride is so important.
One of the things as I've gotten to know you a little bit is your love for Cincinnati. You're like a Cincinnatian through and through. I think that you can also see that in the way that you're a part of different nonprofits in the area, your role in the church. When did you realize that you loved this city so much?
What a great question. I grew up near Cincinnati, but not in Cincinnati. And I have to be honest, like at that time and through college, I didn't spend a lot of time in the city.
Yeah, you went to Miami, right?
I went to Miami, Miami University, and moved away right after college for a job in Wisconsin, and then came back about 5 years later. And I think it started then, and it started in part, we were part of a church that was kind of up and coming new at that time, just breaking through, and it's now become quite a much larger church. And
we love to give churches shout outs on this podcast. So
Crossroads.
Crossroads. Brian Tome, Allie Peterson, and Chuck Mingo have all been guests on the podcast. I love the team. The teaching team there is phenomenal.
Fantastic. They're amazing. So, Crossroads has a love for Cincinnati, a love for the city, and the way that they have decided to show up for neighbors in the city has made a huge impact. So I think for sure, that was a big part of it. And really, in many ways, that was part of the genesis for me to want to roll up my sleeves and get involved, not only with the church, but with other organizations, most of them faith-based, but not all, that were serving different needs for neighbors in our city. And, it's interesting how kind of things unfold over time, but I started engaging with City Gospel Mission over 20 years ago. And you kind of, for me, my journey of like engaging with different organizations has, changes with your life stages, depending on the age of the kids and how much time you can invest and whatnot. But really kind of as I got involved with one organization, it led me to meet people from others. And so then I just kept kind of adding on. And I do think it's interesting, though, that the way that God has directed me has truly been predominantly about folks in our city that are working to break through poverty. And as I mentioned before, it can be anything from the working poor to to poverty at the very other end of like homelessness and addiction. And so as I've learned more about that, as I've learned more about sometimes the way that the web of society and the things that contribute to poverty, I've learned a lot about injustice more broadly, about racial reconciliation in our city. I have a big heart for that as well. There's organizations like Undivided that I'm involved in too. And so there's just, when I think about folks in our city that are working to break free, that need individuals to help love them, to lean in, it's just been tremendous. And it's just kind of been one domino after the other. And I could not be more honored to have been part of these different organizations. It's been awesome.
One of the things as I was doing research on your work, I've noticed your engagements are broad and they're different groups, right? From some stuff at Miami to the Women Helping Women to the stuff that you do with Undivided and the church, of course. So there's a lot of, just as someone who's also a type A personality, there's a lot of time commitments.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah.
Does Susan have more hours in the day than everyone else? Right. Like was one of the questions I was wrestling with. Like, so here's my question, because I think this is true for a lot of the bold ones, the leaders who are listening. How do you discern the right yeses?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. Part of it, of course, is, an evaluation of kind of where I am right now, right? Like right now. One of the things I was given a piece of advice many, many years ago, and it was actually in regard to kind of raising kids, but it applies to kind of all facets of your life, which is when we make a decision to invest in something, it doesn't have to be a decision to invest in that thing forever. There can be a season of investment where you can lean in. Now, I want to clarify that doesn't mean that we want to step into things that we don't want to be committed to or, truly engage in.
Of course, yeah.
But I try to look at my yeses in terms of at a minimum, 1 year time frames. If I can be engaged and invested and contribute a portion of my time that's meaningful in a way that organization needs and would like over at a minimum a 1 year period, then I'm gonna say yes. I also think that 1 year can feel pretty daunting sometimes, right? Sure. You're like, wow, I thought I was going to sign up for a 1 weekend community event. What are you talking about, a year? I think the other piece is being really clear about what the organization needs from you, right? When you step into volunteering, what does that look like? And truly evaluating how can that fit into your day, your week, your month. And then I'm going to be all in. When I sign up for things, I'm fully committed. That's how I roll. And I want to be able to be there to do the work that I felt that I'd signed up for and that they were expecting of me. And I really see all of those opportunities. They're serving opportunities, right? They're ways for me to serve other people. And that continuity does matter. But, I also think that sometimes when we look at things like LinkedIn profiles or other portfolios of things, we have to remember, all of those organizations that I've been so honored to just be a part of over time. And some of them have maintained over all those years. It's been 20 some years, right? So I think that for anyone that's thinking about wanting to invest more time in any particular area of advocacy, remember, it's just one investment at a time. We don't need to think about getting involved in 10 things at once. But that's kind of the approach that I've taken as I've sorted out where can invest.
Yeah. One of the things that I have a tendency to do is to become the president so I could set the meeting schedule around what works for my life. I was like, hey, if we could do this meeting in the day, I think I could help be a part of this. If we have to do it at night, I'm out. Like, I just, it's just that tension, right? And just, one of my mentors used to say that failed expectations lead to bitterness and disappointment.
Yeah.
And so you need to get what you expect out early and they need to get what they expect out early. And let's just love each other in the process. And I think,
that's right.
I think that's a really good way of saying that.
Yeah. I love it.
I want to talk about communication for a minute. I noticed that you did a keynote at Miami University. Yeah. I saw it on your LinkedIn. I'm always interested because you you lead at such a high level. And so you're communicating with direct reports, but then you're also doing things like these keynotes or trade shows or all the different areas where you'll communicate. What's been the process for you to be, you're a great storyteller. So what's been the process for you to develop that storytelling muscle? And then how do you go about preparing for something like a keynote at Miami University, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of developing my ability to tell stories and hopefully be engaging to folks when I'm sharing some thoughts, has been a lot of study, honestly, over many, many years. If I think back to my communication approach, when I was right out of college or in college, it looked very different, of course, right? Like I'm much older now and I've had a lot of years, but I have intentionally invested quite a lot of time in, reading articles, watching videos. I am a lifelong learner. I love to study.
That's
I love
amazing.
to learn. And I want to do that particularly around things that matter a lot to me. And I'm a big believer that our ability to drive change with other people, with organizations, with our community, a lot of it happens through how we communicate. I think for me, and continuing, right? Like I'm still on the journey. And I hope that in 5 years, I look back and I'm a better communicator than I am today, and in 10 years as well. But just continuing to study and continuing to find opportunities to go out there, and whether it's through kind of a one-way communication like a keynote or just in conversation, just to practice. And I've made many mistakes, as we all do, right? You learn stuff that works with folks, you learn stuff that doesn't work, and really have just kind of studied that way. One of the things that communication is to me so important in my entire life, but also in my job, because the ability to communicate well allows us to influence well. And when we are in a position where we may not be the decision maker on things, but we're an advisor, or someone that's looked to for advice, or perspective, our ability to influence is absolutely tied to our ability to communicate. So for me, I think that's continual studying has been really important. When I think about preparing for the Miami University keynote, I mean, first of all, how special was that opportunity for me? It's just, I was so moved when they reached out and asked me. And, I think what's really interesting and I found just so special is that the dean of the College of Engineering and Computing, where I'd graduated from, reached out because they were really interested in having a keynote speaker that was someone that had invested in the community. So that was a distinct choice that they had made for that year's keynote. They wanted someone that was able to talk with the audience about, hey, when you get out there, we're not going to talk about your job. We're not going to talk about work necessarily or tactics on how to do different things. We're going to talk about how do you want to show up for the community as you enter into that after college. And so I made what, for me at that time, was a pretty bold decision to share a keynote that was anchored in my experience visiting women in a maximum security prison.
Wow.
Which I think was probably a little atypical for a college graduation keynote.
In engineering, no doubt.
And in engineering, right?
I'm not poking fun at engineers, but there's a stereotype.
I do know. Yeah, I'm one of those people. We celebrate each other. But I think that what I was trying to accomplish through, I hope, some pretty eye-opening storytelling for those graduates was that we have an opportunity to sit across from folks all the time in our jobs, right? And have dialogue about our work that we're working through, and that's great. And it's important to understand that even though we're talking about work or objectives to be accomplished or plans, that the person on the other side of the table is someone just like us that has their own plans, their own hopes, their own dreams. And then to even extend that further to say that, hey, we have this shared humanity with everyone in our world. And there are going to be a lot of folks that we encounter that aren't in business, that are folks that are in different spots they're struggling. And I can't think of, maybe a more disparate scenario than someone that's incarcerated, maybe even for life. And to think about the idea that those individuals are really important people too. I know that can be a really complex topic, particularly when you think about incarceration, because folks that are there for a reason. And that's not to be dismissed. That's not to be not acknowledged. And I tried to do that in my message to those graduates, not to make light of that circumstance. But the intent and the point was that every individual has hopes and has dreams. And we should be thinking about how to lean into that shared humanity when we go out into the world. And we will be able to do our best work, what I described as our really good work, when we understand that we're just engaging with other people that have aspirations like we do. So for me, the process of preparing was, making the bold choice that was what I wanted to anchor into, and then trying to find a way that really respected the story, that hopefully inspired that group, and to have them, just to be able to say, wow, the world really is my oyster in some way. I've got an opportunity to just, no matter who I'm engaging with, at my workplace, to just really see them for the person that they are. And that just takes all of the pressure away, takes all of the weight away. So that was the approach I went through.
I love it. One of the things I noticed in the notes is that it was about the through line of that good work.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you think about good work, I'm going to ask you to define it for me, but I'm not going to let you take the easy way out and actually give me a definition. I want to think about like one story in your life. If you could give us a little picture of what the good work is, like if just from one, if you could pull it from that kind of the vast experience that you have, how would you define the good work with a story from your life?
Yeah. Years ago, I was volunteering at an organization in the city of Cincinnati called CityLink Center. And CityLink it's a center where they bring together all of these different services that help people that are working to break the cycle of poverty, the working poor. And it tries to break through what typically kind of keeps people in poverty, which is that we've got services for them, but they're all over. It's like difficult to get to. You just kind of keep fighting the system. So the idea is to bring those services together and help people kind of lift themselves up. And I had gone in that evening, and I was working in a center where we would sign up new clients. So they would literally sit down at a computer. Imagine a whole long table with lots of different desktop computers. And people would sit down and sign up to become a client of CityLink so that they could get a service coordinator and kind of begin their journey on getting services, whether it's financial or education, et cetera. And my job that day was to help make sure that I could answer questions as they were navigating the website to enter in their information. And there was a gentleman that came in to sit down, and he was working along. And throughout the night, when our potential clients are finished, then they get up and they leave. So we'd already done the introduction speech and whatnot. And people were kind of leaving, and he was still there. And so I went over and asked if he needed any help. And he had shared with me that he had just moved his family here, his wife and his two daughters, from Eastern Europe. He spoke English. The rest of his family did not. They had moved legally into the United States. They were working to reestablish themselves and make a better life for his family and find good work to do. So we were kind of he's working through the process, and I help him kind of complete. And he asks me, I said, well, why don't you, you need to come back tomorrow. We'll get you set up. We'll get you set up with bus passes and everything. And he had asked me about, well, I don't know how to get back here tomorrow. Oh. And so we were looking for, kind of pulling up a Google map and et cetera. And, things that really struck me in my engagement with him is that as we talked and as he shared a little bit more about his family, when I saw how he talked about his family, how he talked about what he wanted to accomplish, I realized that he was in a situation where he just wanted the absolute best.
Yeah.
And he was willing to do whatever it took. He was willing to work hard. He was willing to lean in. And he just didn't want to disappoint his family. He wanted to really help lift them up. And I just remember that night helping walk him out, getting him set up, looking forward to seeing him the next day. And I remember getting in my car and just crying. And I was like, we all just want to be able to lift our families up. We all just want to be able to do good work, and we all want to be able to do our best. And I think that when you start to see people for that intent, when you start to love people for that intent and receive that as well, that to me is what when I think about what I want to accomplish as an individual, when I want to be able to say at the end of my life, when I want to be able to look back, what I want my kids to see is kind of a legacy of what I've left. I want to do really good work that shows that I loved other people really well. And in the midst of that, I have been on an incredible and grateful journey for all of the opportunities I've had, whether it's been in business or in the community or with my family. But that is one of hundreds of stories of individuals that I've had the fortunate to be literally shoulder to shoulder with, and just see the beauty and the value of people wanting to just do really good work so that they can provide and love their family well.
Yeah, the funny thing about offices is that they skew perspectives so quickly, right? Like it's until you're up boots on the ground and you're down there that it really begins to shift the perspective, and you really get when all the senses are engaged in a meeting, it's a much better meeting, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yep.
Now, I happen to know that you are now taking another bold step of faith, and you're starting a new podcast, and it's centered around this theme. And I love promoting other podcasters. So tell me, and tell the bold ones, who is the perfect person to listen to this podcast, and what's the name of it?
So the name of the podcast is Good Work with Susan Visconti. And the folks that we're going to have on as guests are folks that lead well and love well, and really have a shared faith in humanity. They're folks that are going to talk about the good work that they do, whether it's in the business world, which I think will be quite a lot of folks that I have on, but it won't be exclusive to that. One of the beautiful things about the topic and approach for good work is that good work happens everywhere and in every way. And I think that when we hear examples of good work being done, it lifts us up, right? It reminds us as we go into the day, as we sit down at a desk, or as we step into our workplace, or as we go to a community event or across the street to our neighbor, it reminds us that what good work looks like, the value of that, and how we are uplifted just as much as those around us. So we're going to share a bunch of stories about that. We're going to get some really inspiring, wisdom from folks, as well as some tactical things too, so that you can use as you kind of step into your day. And I think that the audience for this is, a couple of different groups. For certain, I think that it will be a lot of business executives, in part because of what you mentioned, is that it's the moment that we wake up. It's not even when we step into the office, right? It's from the moment that we wake up, and the moment that we lean over to pull up our phone and take a look at what the day has, or the first emails or texts that have come in. We need a reminder of our purpose, what we're doing at work, and something to help just set us off on the right foot. And I hope that this will be that for a lot of individuals that feel like they're stepping into something that's very intense from the beginning. I think another group of folks that where this kind of inspiration and insight will be valuable as well are folks that are stepping into maybe not a business environment, but an environment where they're working to lift others up in things that can feel heavy in a different way than, kind of the stress of business or excitement of growing a business. Folks that are serving others, folks that are stepping into, it's difficult to step into engagements and build relationships with folks that are in poverty. You see a lot of things that are heavy. And so being able to be a light and kind of lift up those individuals as they go into those areas, and just really be a reminder of the good work that they're doing in that space too.
That's so good. I can't wait. Are you going to do episodes once a week? What's the plan there? Have you decided yet?
The plan is going to be every other week.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So it's great. Yeah, that's good. That's an easy consumption rate. I absolutely love it. Okay. I have one more question for you, but before I ask it, I know the bold ones are going to want to find you all over the interwebs. Yep. Where is the best place to learn all things Susan? And maybe sign up for your email list to hear about your upcoming book.
That's right. Yeah. So you can go to susanvisconti.com, my website, which will be up and running. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. I think that's a great place to connect as well from a business perspective. And then, of course, I've got the Instagram account that's, I think maybe a little more humorous, a little bit less interesting perhaps, but I think the website is the best place to go.
Good. It's so good too. So good. So good. Okay. Last question I love to ask people. It's an advice question. I'm going to invite you to go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, except I get to name the season of life that you're in.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I want to take you back to your commencement day from Miami University.
Yeah.
You're a young, bright-eyed, ambitious, driven future executive. If you could pull her aside before the day really got started, sit knee to knee with her, hold her hands and look her in the eyes. Mm-hmm. What's the one piece of advice that you're going to give her as she journeys out to start a new career?
I don't know how well she would have listened to this.
Sure, preach, right?
But what I would have told her is that the way to grow, and I've always been someone that loves to learn and loves to grow. The way to do that is to embrace being uncomfortable, to embrace the process of learning, which is very frustrating. That's just a fact. It is. When we go from not knowing to knowing, there's a period of frustration that's called learning. To embrace that, to embrace discomfort, to embrace uncertainty, and to know that on the other side of those things is real growth. It took me, you think back right over your career, over your time to different pivotal points where you kind of learn those lessons in a harder way. And I can certainly think about those throughout my life. And I'm grateful I had those, right? In the time they're difficult. But I think that if she would have listened to me and embraced it, and I think that knowing myself, I would have definitely had that planted back there, which would have made some things a little bit easier along the way. But without a doubt, being able to embrace that. And I am so grateful that I am in a place now in my life and in my career where most of what I engage in has a lot of uncertainty. The type of work that I do, a lot of things to plan for the future, how we navigate difficult and complex business problems. Certainly the places where I really roll up my sleeves within the community, there's a lot of uncertainty to navigate. And the climate that is our world, and seeing that as opportunistic and leaning in and not being afraid of it.
That's so good. So good. Susan, thank you so much for your generosity of time today. Thank you for your heart for Southwest Ohio. And thank you for just being such a leader and a great voice in our community.
I really appreciate that. Those are such kind words. And thank you so much for having me on. And this has been incredible.